I think the growth lays outside of Europe. And if we see that and we want to grow here, we have to grow with export, and to get that export, we have to find agreements with the countries we want to deliver our goods to. So I see big opportunities there, and I think if we do this agreement now with the Americans, it can also set an example, a good example, a role model for future agreements, and especially here, where we have, let's say, friends on our other sides who share the same common ground in thinking like we do. If we can make the right role model there, it can be copied all over the world, and it would help us tremendously.
I mean, I think we should be very clear that globalization is happening and will continue to happen. And again, I think TTIP, in the sense of sharing forces transatlantically, is an excellent opportunity to shape globalization according to our values. And I'm not afraid to say Western values, because there's nothing bad about Western values. On the contrary.
This trade deal between the EU and US, we want workers' rights to be respected, quality jobs, public services to be upheld, democratic decision-making, and international convention to be implemented. So basically, an agreement between the EU and US should serve the public interest, not simply vested interest. So it's just we have no evidence about the jobs, the type of jobs, where, in which region, in which sector, who are going to be the losers, who are going to be the winners, and what is being done for those who might be losing from this agreement. Then it's very important for us that public services should be respected. We don't want public services to be affected by this agreement. It's also a very, very strong point for us.
In what we see around the TTIP negotiations and the information that we have is that there is a risk that the standards that currently are applicable to consumer protection and other areas of protection could be lowered. And now it's also very, very important that you do not consider this to be a United States versus Europe debate, because we are not like Europe is the best place to be for a consumer.
I think it's not only us profiting from that by having more employment in Germany in this case, it's also the US, because then finally their cars would last longer because they would have our spark plugs, and that makes it much easier to run.
I'm very surprised about the debate we're having in Europe. I think the US negotiators are much more preoccupied on what might be in the Canada agreement than we should be in Europe. But the very unhelpful debate we're having it in Europe, I don't hear any debate in the US. So sometimes I'm not so sure whether our way of acting in these stories is so smart. But do I talk about red lines? No, because I think what we need to see is a negotiation where we have many aspects on the table and where we are able to make also creative solutions, because this is what this agreement is all about. We are talking about negotiation between two blocs, which so far were used to impose the view on the others. And this goes for the US, and this certainly also goes for the European Union. So this time we will have to be creative. So do we have a long list of ambitions? Yes. And it's longer than what I was stating here. But I rather don't talk about red lines, because we will have to judge on the overall package.
We know that it has to be finalized by the end of next year. After that, it's dead. So I think it would be maybe more realistic to have a narrow scope and to have a success on that scope rather than to have it dead at the end of next year.